Hey YouTube, thanks for joining. Today I'm going to be going into a little bit more on CSS Grid, the uses of it, and more specifically we'll be dealing with grid rows and grid columns, setting them up through the templating, and then positioning things on them. Real basic introductory stuff, but the more that we play with CSS Grid, the more that we learn. So this is a very simple website, just got an H1 and then a container that's got 10 images in it, and then I'm using CSS Grid to position these images, some transformations as you can see to kind of make it look like a pile of photos on the ground, and then when you hover over them you get this cool little animated thing that goes on. Just again, some transformation and transitioning going on with CSS. And with that being said, let's jump into our code here. So I've got Visual Studio Code open with my two files. You just create a folder anywhere, even on your desktop, and then you'll want these two files, index.html and style.css. Those are the two files that we'll use to create our website today. Now you can use any text editor that you want. I always prefer Visual Studio Code because it comes with these extensions, and it comes pre-packaged with an extension called Emmet, and with Emmet I can do things like this. Just type in HTML and I get all this template for this HTML just comes right off the bat. I don't have to bother typing anything else in. If you don't have that, just copy the code down and then keep going. So we're going to change our title. It's going to say My Photo Mess, and then after our title I'm going to paste in this link. And this is just Google Fonts. So we're going to just use a font for Google, or from Google Fonts. Just search for it, go to their website. You literally click on whatever font you want, and then copy and paste the link into your head. And it even gives you the style, the font family style for your CSS. But we'll get into that later. And speaking of CSS, we got to make sure we link to our style sheet. Oops. So link. There we go. And then style.css. Okay, and that's all we need in our head. In the body, like I said, we've got an H1 tag, and it's going to be the same thing, My Photo Mess. And then under here, we're going to have a div with a class of container. So we're going to say dot container. Again, this is some more container. There we go. And then we're going to put in our images. This thing's not going. There we go. Alright, our images, we're going to be getting those from unsplash.com. It's just a random photo generation site. Let me copy and paste the link here. So it's source.unsplash.com/random/ whatever dimension you want your photos to be. So as you can see, we're going to be working with 300 by 200 photos. And we're going to want 10 of these. I'm going to copy and paste all 10 of them. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've already got these set up, but basically what's going to happen, or what you need to do, instead of having 10 that all say 300, 200, because then you're going to get 10 of all the same random image that comes up, you got to change the dimensions slightly, and you can see I've done that. I've just made variances by a pixel here and there, so that it gives me 10 different random images each time. I've also given them all an ID. Now let me get this first one as well. So ID, we're going to say first, and then I've got second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. So 10 total images. And then another extension that we have is we have the live server. So to pull up our live server, we're just going to hit Alt-LO, and it'll open up a window. There's our window. Oops. And no, there we go. Okay, here's our window. So let me close down the demo one. So we don't want that open anymore. We're just going to be going off of this. Alright, so now we've got our 10 photos and our H1. And that's the end of our HTML. That's all that we're writing. So I mean, we can even close this window. We're done with it. Alright, so next we're going to go on to our style.css. And we're going to begin creating some styles. So we're going to start off with the body tag. And in here, we're going to have no margin, margin 0, padding 0, and then I'm going to change the background to this Rebecca purple, just because I like that color. And there we go. Okay. The next thing we'll style is going to be our H1. And I'm just going to copy and paste and go through what each thing does. So here's our H1. For the color, I've picked this very light gray color, and the way that I do that, I'll even just show you real quick, is I start with a color like gray or white. We'll just start with gray, and then if you hover over it in Visual Studio Code, it gives you this color picker, and then I just say, okay, I want it to be a really, really light gray. So we'll say it's 243, 243, 243. Padding, I'm giving it 0 on the top and the bottom, 20 pixels on the left and the right. And here's our font family that I just copy and pasted from Google Fonts. Permanent markers, what we're going to be using. I'm giving it a letter spacing of 3 pixels. It was just a little too squished together for my liking. And then a text shadow of 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 6 pixels, and then this dark gray. And again, I just started with a gray, hovered it, and then selected what color I actually wanted. So let's see what that does. Once it saves, and then let's refresh. Oh, something's not going on. Oh, yeah, no, it worked. Sorry. I'm thinking I was changing the container, but I haven't accessed that yet. All we did was the H1. And there it is. Okay. So the next thing we're going to style is going to be the container. And here's where it starts to get interesting with grid. So our container, we want it to be a grid container, so we're going to say display grid. And then we've got grid template columns. And we're going to, this is how we set up the columns and rows, and actually I have an Excel document that'll help us understand this a little bit better. So this is what we're going to be creating, is this 10 by 10 grid, and the way that this is set up, this is how you do it. You do grid template columns, so you're templating the columns, you're telling it how you want these columns to be set up inside this container, and I'm going to use this method repeat, and we're going to repeat 10 times this one fractional. So that, again, what that does is it just divides our container into 10 columns, and they're 10 one fractional columns. They're going to all be even by 1 unit, and that's that fractional unit that's specific to CSS Grid. And then we're doing the same thing with the grid template rows. So now we're doing it with rows, repeating 10 times at 1 fractional. So that just creates all these rows, you know, all the way 1 through 10, and makes them all even. And you can, I mean, this is just, again, this is introductory stuff here, but you don't have to use fractionals. You can use percentages, you can use pixels, you can use auto, you can increase the number of fractionals. You don't have to stick to 10 even ones. You can have like 1, and then the second one could be like 3 fractionals, and then the next one is 2 fractionals, and you'd have columns that look like this, and that's how you can quickly, and then same thing with the rows. That's how you can quickly create dynamic layouts and assign things how you want, and it's a lot of fun. So we're just going with the basic 10 by 10, and that's what we've created here with these two. And then I'm going to change the background to this really light gray color, and then add a padding of 50 pixels just to give us some room to breathe, and let's see what that looks like. Alright, so now you can see with the container background being this light gray, we create this like header effect with just the body and the H1, so very minimal code here. And then all 10 of our images are now trying to be in this row 1 column 1 spot, because I haven't assigned them to be anywhere else. So now they're all trying to be up here, and they're just lined up. So let's go ahead and style them and change that. So I'm going to go ahead and write out the first one, and then I'm going to copy and paste the rest, because it's just changing stuff as we go. But we're going to access our first image by hash first, the ID first, and then we'll give it, oops, oh, cool, I didn't know I could do that. We're going to give it some style. Sheesh, this is ruining my mojo. Alright, there we go. Alright, so first we're going to say I know how to spell, transform, and we're going to rotate it, and let's say the first one we're going to do negative 20 degrees, and that's how you want to do the rotate right here, in degrees. And then we're going to say grid column, and this is where we determine where in what columns we want this image to be, and we're going to say we want it to start in the second column and span across to the beginning of the fourth column. And that's this a little bit tricky to understand, but basically I'm saying I want my image to start here in column 2 and span across to the beginning of 4. It's not going to be in 4. It goes right to the beginning of the fourth column. So I'm essentially spanning it right here on this 2 and 3. So let's look and see real quick. You can see one image is right here. Oh, I see what's it's our grid is here now. Either way, so we've got this 2-4 positioning here at the top. It's given it the rotation, and then let's define where we want it to be on the row as well. So the same thing, we're going to say grid row, and this one we're also going to have it span from 2 to 4. And so it should be down on the row below it now. There we go. Okay, so let's keep on moving on. And the last thing, we're going to do a transition. Oops, transition. Because we're going to be hovering and adding a hover effect, and I want it to be nice and smooth, so we're going to say transition all 250 milliseconds, and we're going to give it an ease in. Okay, so that's that, and then we add the hover effect. So we're going to, again, first, then what happens when we hover. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the Z index and give it a 1. So what that does is that it basically lifts the photo up above everything else. So when we hover it, we can't see it right now because it's already on top of everything else. But it lifts it up so that everything else starts on 0. So if you give it a Z index of 1, it'll rise to the top of all your other elements. We're going to transform. We're going to rotate 0 degrees. So that basically puts it back right. And then we're going to, instead of this, we're also going to scale the image, sorry. We're going to scale the image so that it's bigger when we hover it, and we'll do that by 1.8 of its original size. Okay, and then we're going to add a box shadow. That way it kind of gives it the illusion that it's floating above stuff. I'm going to say 1 pixel, oops. 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 8 pixels, 2 pixels, and black. We'll just give it a black shadow. Okay, so now when we hover on the image, it should right itself and give it this border, or this shadow. Great, so now you can see it looks like it's just kind of floating above. Okay, cool. So that's what we want to do, and you can see where it positioned itself on there. So the next one, we're going to access the second one, and this one I'm just going to copy and paste in and then tell you what we what we did to it, and then we'll check and see where the position is on the grid as well. So here's our second. We are putting it on the column 5 to 7, the row 1 to 3, and then all the other stuff is exactly the same. So 5, 7, and 1, 3. If we look at where it positions itself, it's way over here. So that's 5, 7, 1, 3, and that's because we still haven't positioned all of these other things. So it's giving us a bigger grid area than we want. So great. Next one is done. And then I've changed the rotation amount. You can see it's not as rotated as this one is. I gave it -2 degrees instead of -20. And that, yeah, those are the only differences, is the transformation and where it's going to be on the grid. So now we're going to do that with a third image. Go a little bit faster here and get through all 10. So this one I'm rotating -70 degrees. It's going in the column from 3 to 5 and the row from 2 to 4. Everything else is the same. And then when we save it, we'll see now we've got this guy. Same thing, all the same effects that they all have. Okay, so let's move on to our fourth image. And this one we're gonna give, I don't have a rotate for its initial one, so this one's just gonna be the same. It's gonna be regularly horizontally aligned. I'm not changing the rotate at all. But we're going to position it on 4 and 6 on the column, 5 and 7 on the row. So it should be, where is that one? Oh, there it is. Yeah, as it gets down, I know it was going to be down here. Eventually it'll all be in the middle, but because these are all just kind of lined up, it's making it a lot bigger than it needs to be. But that'll change as we kind of arrange where the pictures are and they start kind of falling into their containers. Right now it's wondering what I'm doing because it doesn't know what's going on. Alright, so this one, the fifth image, we're going to rotate it negative 40 degrees. Column is on 3.5 and grid row is on 4.6. All the other stuff is the same. And that pops up. There it is. So see, now they're starting to come together. You can see this one even came up a little bit. It's not as far down. And this guy's still over here. But that's okay, that's going to change soon. So now let's go to our sixth image. And this one we're going to rotate positive 30 degrees, and we're going to put it on the grid column 7.9, so it's going to be all the way over at the end. And then grid row 2.4, so it's going to be like up at the top right corner. And then everything else is the same. So let's look and see where that goes. So again, it should be, there it is. Yep, top right on the second row. Okay, the next one we're going to do is the seventh image. So we're getting closer to having all this look like the actual photo mess. So this one we're only rotating negative 5 degrees on the 4.6 column and the 2 to 4 row. So it'll be on the second row like this one is, but it's going to be a little bit closer in. So it'll be like right around here. And there it is. Okay, so you kind of see how this grid works now. It literally is just laying out in your container how you want things to look. So now we're going to go on to our eighth image. And again, copy and paste. Now for the eighth one, we're going to rotate it only 7 degrees. It's going to be in a grid column of 5.7 and a grid row of 3.5. So 5.7, 3.5 column, it's going to be like here, but lower. So I'd say like around here. And there it is. Yep. Okay, so we're looking better. You can see things are starting to get closer together. Like this guy isn't way off to the side, or I'm sorry, this guy is not way off to the side anymore because we're not pushing the container way out that way. And soon the bottom I don't know why the bottom's doing that. It seems weird to me, but that's okay. Let's continue on, and hopefully I don't have to debug something in the middle of the video. So let's go to our ninth column, rotate it only negative 10 degrees, grid column 6.8, grid row 5.7. So that guy's going to pop up, and there we go. And then the last one is our 10th one, and that one we're going to rotate it a positive 40 degrees. The grid column is going to be 7.9, grid row is going to be 3.5, and then save, and boom, just like that, because now everything has been assigned the grid. Everything fits in the same spots, and it's nicely aligned. You've got this big photo mess. All of our transformations are there, and you can see, it's just positioning things, and that's one of the great things about grid too, is that you'll notice as we laid these things out. We were positioning photos, like here from like 3.5 and 2.4, and then we'd put something from like 4.6, so it overlaps each other, and that's how you get this like pile effect. And you can do that with different elements too. It doesn't have to be photos, it can be containers and divs and all kinds of stuff. So it really just opens up the floodgates of possibilities that you can do with CSS Grid. That's about it. Thank you guys for joining me today. Like and subscribe for more content. I'll be doing more grid videos and just kind of playing around with stuff like this. Because like I said, the best way to learn is to just play. And so like and subscribe, you'll get some more videos of me just playing around with things like this. And yeah, thank you.